Welcome to the deep dive. So, you've shared some really interesting sources focusing on chronic pelvic pain syndrome, CPPS, and how it connects with vaginal health.
That's right.
And our goal for this deep dive is really to sift through this material and pull out the key insights, specifically how CPPS and vaginal health kind of influence each other.
Exactly. We want to understand the why behind the connection, not just that there is one, looking at the mechanisms linking them.
Okay, perfect. So, first things first, let's make sure we're all clear on CPPS itself. The sources describe it as, well, persistent pelvic pain, right? Lasting 6 months or more.
That's the standard time frame. And critically, it's often pain without a clear, identifiable cause, like, say, an infection or an obvious structural problem.
And what really jumped out from the sources was the impact. It's not just localized pain, it seems to affect, daily activities, emotional well-being, even relationships.
That's a really crucial point. This isn't just a minor discomfort. In the pelvic region, it's not working in isolation, is it? It's like Grand Central Station down there.
Huh, good analogy. Yeah, the sources definitely emphasize that interconnectedness. You've got reproductive organs, urinary system components, bits of the gastrointestinal tract, plus muscles, nerves.
Precisely. All packed in together. So if you have a major disruption like chronic pain from CPPS, it makes sense it would ripple outwards.
And affect things like vaginal health, which is right there in the mix.
Absolutely. It's all part of that same complex neighborhood.
Okay, so let's dig into those ripple effects. One of the first major impacts mentioned is inflammation and sensitivity.
Yes. Chronic inflammation is often a hallmark of CPPS. It's not just a specific site of pain. It can affect the surrounding muscles, tissues, and nerves, making everything generally more sensitive, like turning up the volume on sensation.
And this inflammation isn't always contained, is it? The sources suggest it can actually spread or at least affect the vaginal lining itself.
That seems to be the case. This generalized pelvic inflammation can lead to redness, maybe a burning sensation, just general discomfort in the vagina.
So if someone with CPPS is experiencing that kind of vaginal irritation, this underlying inflammation could be a big driver.
Very likely, yes.
Yeah.
And think about what happens when tissues are constantly irritated. They become more fragile.
Yeah,
Right?
makes sense.
So these inflamed vaginal tissues are potentially more susceptible to tiny injuries, micro tears, and unfortunately that makes them more vulnerable to infections taking hold.
Okay, that connection is clear. Inflammation is one piece. Another huge area the sources covered is the vaginal microbiome. This seems so important.
It really is fundamental to vaginal health. We're talking about this complex community of bacteria living in the vagina.
And the stars are the lactobacillus species, right?
Exactly. They're the guardians.
Yeah.
They produce lactic acid, which keeps the vaginal environment acidic, a low pH. And that acidity is key because it naturally keeps potentially harmful bacteria and yeast in check, like Lactobacillus acidophilus. The name says it all.
So how does CPPS throw a wrench in the works here? How does chronic pain mess with these good bacteria?
Well, think about the stress response. Living with chronic pain, day in and day out, puts the body under significant stress.
Right. Constant physical and emotional strain.
And this sustained stress response can, unfortunately, disrupt that delicate balance. It can actually lead to a decrease in those beneficial lactobacillus levels.
So managing stress isn't just for your head, it directly impacts your vaginal environment.
Precisely. It's a direct link.
Okay, so lactobacillus levels drop. What happens next? What are the consequences?
When you lose those acid producers, the vaginal pH starts to climb. It becomes less acidic, more alkaline.
And that's bad.
It's problematic, yes, because that less acidic, more alkaline environment is much more welcoming to the kinds of microbes we don't want flourishing there.
Like what, specifically?
The sources point directly to an increased risk of things like bacterial vaginosis BV, which often causes that telltale fishy odor and discharge, and also yeast infections.
Yeah. Both incredibly common and uncomfortable issues. Dealing with those on top of pelvic pain sounds awful.
It really compounds the discomfort.
Okay, another factor the sources bring up is muscle tension, especially related to pain during sex.
Yes, this is a major issue. CPPS is very often linked with pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. The muscles of the pelvic floor can become chronically tight or even go into spasms. It's often an involuntary guarding response to the pain.
And how does that muscle tension directly impact the vagina?
Well, directly, it can cause pain during intercourse. The medical term is dyspareunia. But it's also that constant tension itself can be irritating to the surrounding tissues, including the vagina.
kind of a feedback loop. Pain causes tension, tension causes more pain and irritation,
Exactly. And it can lead to other issues too, right? The sources mention that experiencing pain during intimacy can understandably lead to avoiding it.
which can cause emotional distress, strain relationships.
Absolutely. And sometimes that anxiety and stress can even worsen the physical tension, making the underlying problem worse.
It's complex. It really highlights the physical and emotional entanglement. So, moving on slightly, the sources also mention an increased susceptibility to infections overall for women with CPPS,
Yes, and this ties back into a few things we've touched on.
like the microbiome disruption.
Definitely the microbiome disruption.
Yes.
And also that inflammation leading to potentially more fragile tissues, maybe those microtears we mentioned. Both things weaken the natural defenses.
Making it easier for infections to get started.
Exactly. The sources specifically call out, again, bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections as being more frequent, but also urinary tract infections, UTIs.
Ah, right. Painful bladder infections. Is there a link there too?
There can be. Sometimes it's related to the same microbial imbalances affecting both areas or the pelvic inflammation impacting the urinary tract. Interestingly, the sources mention D-mannose here.
D-mannose. What's that?
It's a type of sugar, actually, but it has this neat property where it can kind of bind to the bacteria that often cause UTIs, especially E. coli.
So it helps prevent them from sticking to the urinary tract walls.
That's the idea. It helps flush them out. So it's relevant because UTIs can be part of this broader picture of pelvic discomfort and microbial issues.
Got it. And these infections, they aren't just minor annoyances layered on top, are they?
No, the sources are clear that these recurrent infections really add to the overall discomfort and can further weaken that vaginal barrier, making future problems more likely. It's a frustrating cycle.
Okay, one last major impact the sources highlight is the role of stress and the immune system.
Yes, this is huge. We talked about the stress response affecting the microbiome, but the mental toll of chronic pain, the stress, anxiety, sometimes depression is significant.
Absolutely. It must be incredibly draining.
It is. And that chronic stress doesn't just stay in your head. It has real physiological effects, including potentially suppressing your immune system function.
Okay, so a weaker immune response. How does that connect back to vaginal health, specifically with CPPS?
Well, a couple of ways. First, a less effective immune system means your body is less equipped to fight off those opportunistic infections we just discussed. BV, yeast, UTIs.
Right.
And second, the immune system is also involved in tissue repair. So if the vaginal tissues are irritated or have those micro-injuries, a suppressed immune system makes healing slower and more difficult.
And the sources also mention stress itself can worsen inflammation.
Yes, it's another one of those vicious cycles. Stress can fuel inflammation. Inflammation causes pain and contributes to vaginal issues, which causes more stress.
Wow. It really paints a picture of how interconnected everything is. Pain, inflammation, microbiome, muscles, stress, immunity. It's all tangled together.
It truly is, which is why addressing it effectively often requires looking at multiple angles.
Okay, well, that actually leads us nicely into the next part of the courses, which focuses on, the path forward, restoring balance and improving vaginal health.
Yes, the good news is there are ways to approach this, focusing on that holistic picture.
So what are some of the key strategies the sources suggest people can start thinking about, maybe even implementing alongside potential supplements?
Well, a major focus is reducing that underlying inflammation. The sources mention some natural approaches here, like using ingredients known for their soothing and anti-inflammatory properties. Aloe vera comes up, and also reishi mushroom.
For calming irritation and helping tissues repair?
Exactly. Gentle support. Then, crucially, rebalancing the vaginal microbiome. We've established how vital that is.
And how do the sources suggest doing that?
Probiotics are the main strategy here, specifically supplementing with beneficial lactobacillus strains. The sources list several: Acidophilus, Rhamnosus, Reuteri, Plantarum, and also Bacillus coagulans.
So actively putting the good guys back in.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
Helping replenish those protective bacteria, which in turn helps lower the pH back to that healthy acidic range and provides a natural defense.
Makes sense. What about strengthening the vaginal barrier itself, making the tissue healthier?
That involves ensuring the body has the right nutrients for tissue repair and resilience. A stronger vaginal lining is naturally less prone to sensitivity, irritation, and those micro-injuries. Good overall nutrition plays a role here.
Okay. And protecting against infections, beyond just balancing the microbiome.
Yes, the sources talk about using targeted natural antimicrobials, things like oregano leaf extract and caprylic acid.
And the idea there is
The idea is to help gently reduce the overgrowth of harmful bacteria or fungi, but without wiping out the beneficial bacteria you're trying to encourage. It's a more selective approach.
Right, not like a broad spectrum antibiotic that kills everything.
Exactly. And finally, the sources circle back to the importance of supporting overall immune function
Because a strong immune system helps fight inflammation and infections.
and helps manage the negative effects of stress. Supporting your immunity provides a really solid foundation for improving vaginal health in this context.
Okay, so addressing inflammation, microbiome, barrier function, infections, and immunity. It's a multi-pronged approach. Now, the sources you shared do introduce a specific product called Balance Complex. How does that fit into this picture?
Right. Balance Complex is presented as a comprehensive vaginal probiotic supplement. It seems designed to kind of embody that multi-pronged approach we've been discussing, targeting several of those underlying factors linked to vaginal discomfort, especially in the context of conditions like CPPS.
So it's trying to hit multiple points at once.
That appears to be the formulation goal, yes, to support overall vaginal health by addressing inflammation, microbial balance, and offering protection.
The sources provide quite a bit of detail on it, calling it the original vaginal probiotic, mentioning it's been around over 10 years, millions of capsules sold. They list a high CFU count, over 100 billion per gram, and mention cranberry and D-mannose for urinary health too. Plus, lots of 5-star reviews on Amazon.
Yeah, they provide a lot of context for credibility.
They also call it a maximum strength 17-in-1 strain blend for odor, itching, discharge, and mention it's non-GMO, made in FDA-registered GMP-certified facilities, and has a money-back guarantee. That's quite the list of credentials.
It is. And looking at the ingredients list they provide helps understand how it aligns with the strategies we discussed.
Okay, let's break that down. The probiotic blend, first 100 billion CFU. You mentioned some of these strains earlier.
Yes, so Lactobacillus acidophilus for pH balance and inhibiting bad bacteria, Lactobacillus rhamnosus for immune support and microbial balance, Lactobacillus reuteri, known for reducing inflammation and helping tissue healing, Lactobacillus plantarum, which acts as an antioxidant and aids tissue repair, and Bacillus coagulans, which helps prevent pathogen overgrowth and supports long-term balance.
So a real cocktail of beneficial bacteria aimed at restoring that core microbiome function.
Seems to be the intent.
And then the cranberry and D-mannose blend, 300 milligrams. We touched on D-mannose for UTIs.
Right. This blend is specifically there to support urinary tract health by helping prevent bacteria from sticking to the urinary and vaginal linings, a common issue that can overlap with CPPS symptoms for some.
A helpful addition. Then oregano leaf extract, 250 milligrams, and caprylic acid, 400 milligrams.
These are those natural antimicrobials we mentioned. Oregano helps combat bacteria and fungi while trying to spare the good microbes. Caprylic acid is particularly known for targeting yeast overgrowth, like Candida.
Okay, so targeting potential infections gently. What about protease, 50 milligrams, and cellulase, 32 milligrams? Those are enzymes.
Yes, their role, according to the sources, is to help break down biofilms.
Biofilms.
Think of them as protective shields that harmful bacteria can build around themselves, making them harder to get rid of. These enzymes help disrupt those shields, potentially making the probiotics more effective.
Interesting. Kind of clearing the way.
That's a good way to put it.
Then there's aloe vera leaf, 50 milligram. We mentioned that for soothing.
Yep, included for its anti-inflammatory and soothing properties, supporting healing of irritated tissues.
Carabinogalactan, 50 milligram. Haven't heard of that one.
It acts as a prebiotic food for the good bacteria and also helps boost immune function and fight inflammation.
Okay. Anise seed, 50 milligram.
Also brings anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, helping to calm irritation.
Black walnut hulls, 50 milligrams.
Known for antifungal and antibacterial effects, potentially helping protect against reinfections.
Wormwood, 50 milligram.
Included to support immune strength and microbial balance.
And finally, reishi mushroom, 25 milligram. You mentioned this earlier too.
Yes, for reducing inflammation, supporting immunity, and promoting tissue repair. So you can see it's a very comprehensive list aiming to tackle vaginal health from many of the angles relevant to CPPS.
Definitely looks like a multi-target formula based on those ingredients and the issues we've discussed. Now, beyond supplements, the sources also offered some practical, everyday tips.
Yes, and these are really foundational. Lifestyle factors make a big difference. Stress management is key practices like mindfulness, yoga, meditation. We know stress fuels the fire.
Makes total sense. What else?
Gentle pelvic floor exercises. Maybe working with a pelvic floor therapist to learn relaxation and appropriate strengthening, which can directly ease pain. Staying hydrated, good for all tissues and helps flush the system.
Simple but important.
Absolutely. And prioritizing good vaginal hygiene, using gentle, fragrance-free products, definitely avoiding douching, which disrupts the microbiome, and wearing breathable fabrics like cotton underwear, and looser clothing to reduce irritation and allow airflow.
All really good, actionable advice people can implement right away. Okay, one last resource mentioned in the materials was vaginalquiz.com. That's vaginalquiz.bycom. What's the story there?
Yeah, this is presented as a tool for listeners. It's described as a quick quiz, under 2 minutes, based on science, designed to give a personalized vaginal health analysis.
Personalized how?
The idea is to help someone understand maybe what's going on with their body, if they're experiencing things like recurring infections, dryness, low libido, or just general intimate wellness concerns.
So a starting point if you're not sure what the issue is.
Exactly. It's positioned as fast, free, and private. After the quiz, it provides a custom report outlining your potential vaginal health profile, highlighting possible imbalances, and offering expert-backed suggestions tailored to your answers.
Suggestions like,
Could be lifestyle habits, or potentially even supplement types that might be relevant based on your symptoms and lifestyle inputs.
kind of like a cheat sheet, as the source material puts it, for understanding your intimate health without maybe an awkward appointment or endless Googling right off the bat.
That seems to be the aim, to provide some initial personalized direction and insight. So if someone's listening and thinking, yeah, some of this resonates, but where do I even start? This quiz might offer a useful first step.
Sounds like a potentially helpful resource to check out vaginalquiz.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the main takeaway from these sources is really powerful. Living with CPPS is challenging, undoubtedly, but it doesn't have to dictate everything, especially your vaginal health.
Absolutely. Understanding that connection between CPPS and vaginal health, the inflammation, the microbiome shifts, the immune impact is the first step.
And then taking action, right? Addressing that inflammation, working to restore that crucial microbial balance,
Yeah.
supporting your immune system. These are concrete steps people can take.
They really are. It's about moving towards relief and achieving more lasting vaginal health and comfort, even alongside managing CPPS. This exploration really highlights that.
It does. So for everyone listening, maybe take a moment after this to reflect. Based on everything we've talked about today, what's one aspect of your own vaginal health that you feel maybe you'd like to understand a bit better, or perhaps feel more empowered to take control over? Thinking about that could be a great starting point for your next step toward feeling better.